På globala torget att fortsätta på tema konflikt och miljö. Vi kommer att få lyssna till författaren Andri Snaer Magnason i ett samtal med mig om hans nya bok Tiden och vattnet. Ja. And there we have you. So nice to see you, Andri. Hi, welcome.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
It's so nice to meet you, even though we are meeting in cyber and not in person, but nevertheless.
We're in the future.
We're in the future and also hopefully in the present. We only have one shot at the present, right?
but also hopefully in the past, because I think we want to meet in real life in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I also realized we are born on the same year, 1973.
Yes, it's a very good year.
But when I read about what you have accomplished, I'm a little bit concerned maybe you have lived twice as long as I have, because you have been a poet, you have been writing children's books, you have written essays, scripts for movies, you have also run for president.
Yeah, just once, yeah.
But now we are here to talk about this, the latest piece of literature that you have produced that is called Time and Water.
Yes.
And it's going to be published, from what I understand, in Sweden 2021.
Yeah, I think it's coming in January. It was supposed to come now, but something happened. So.
But I've had the opportunity and luxury to read it. So I've made some notes here. I don't have the book. That's always nice to stick to when you discuss.
The English copy is
perfect.
I don't have the Swedish one, but it's well.
No, exactly. It doesn't exist yet.
So it's called On Time and Water.
Yes.
And,
please, Andri, can you elaborate a little bit on what you have done, especially if we start with the time concept? What is your intention in discovering and analyzing time, the concept of time in this book?
Yeah, the idea of the book is that the issues that we're faced with are in some kind of a strange dilemma, that we are detached to these issues in a strange way. So, for example, the concept of time, which we think we are connected to. But when a scientist says something is happening 2090, we don't feel connected to it. We don't feel that time really belongs to us. So if a scientist says, 2100, it just feels like sci-fi. It doesn't feel like we are responsible for that time. So the idea in the book is how can you bring intimacy and urgency to a date like 2100? Why did we destroy the economy and basically, change all the rules of society because of a virus that makes us sick next week, but we can't kind of do anything radical to meet something that is even much bigger happening in 2050, 60, 70, 90.
Yes, because also if you talk about those two concepts in the title, time and water, they are both untangible and tangible at the same time. We relate to them like on an everyday basis, but still they are very existential and sort of not so easy to grasp in a sense. And one of them is also a nature resource or something that is linked to the premise of life on Earth. And the other one is sort of dictating the conditions for our human life, our existence that is ending, and the possibility. You have this very, very beautiful metaphor in the book about how to be able to sort of connect to, and as you say, make a future, a distant future, a more sort of intimate time frame that is possible to get your own personal link to. And it's a little challenge by your table in the kitchen when you sit with your grandmother and your daughter. Can you explain a little bit about that challenge?
Yeah, so it's a very simple idea. So basically, I sit with my grandmother because I'm so lucky. I have a grandmother. She's 96 years old, And so she can actually tell me how long 100 years are. And she tells me, I ask her, are 100 years a long time or a short time? And she tells me, it's a short time. Mm. So I sit with my grandmother and I ask my daughter what time she can touch with her bare hands. That is, she can be influenced by somebody that is born 1924. So she can get direct memories, experience, knowledge from a person born 1924. Mm. And then I ask her, but when is someone still alive that you will love in the same way? Mm. And she asked me, what do you mean? I said, just, if you become 90 and you have a favorite 20-year-old in your life, when is that person still out there on Earth talking about you as their major influence in life? Mm. So my daughter does the calculation. She will be as old as my grandmother in the year 2100. Mm. She might have a favorite 20-year-old, a fully grown human being that is born 2080. That person is still talking about my daughter in the year 2170. Mm. So she can touch almost 250 years with her bare hands. That is, our time is the time of the people that we know and love, the people that create us, and our time is the time of the people that we will know and love, the time that we will create. So 1924 to 2170 is actually a time that my daughter can carry a single memory without writing it down, just by one person carrying a memory between her grandmother and her own granddaughter. Mm.
And that's a metaphor for trying to relate to the future, which is still the most difficult project, I believe, within the climate discussions. It's like we cannot, even though we want to understand implications and statistics and forecasts, we sort of living in denial still.
Yes, so what is happening is that within the lifetime of a single human being, becoming as old as my grandmother, I use my grandmother as like a measuring stick. She's like a metric system in my book.
Yeah.
So within the time of somebody born today becoming as old as my grandmother, all the fundaments of water on the planet will change fundamentally. Mm. That is, the glaciers are receding and becoming ocean. The oceans are rising more than we've seen in the last 10,000 years. And then the pH of the oceans, the ocean acidification is changing more in the next 100 years than in the previous 50 million years. Mm. And there again, you come across like an obstacle, because 50 million years, I could have said 50 billion years, and you would not have felt it was, yeah. you would feel the same. So the idea is that how do you talk about an issue that is actually larger than language? Mm. That is, how do you scale up? I can't, if I would start screaming at the audience, you would just never invite me to the stage again. Mm. And we've seen it with Greta Thunberg, when she scales up to real emergency kind of talk. Mm. She starts to be dismissed by a large portion of the people, while actually what she is saying is not even close to the scale of the urgency that is needed, if you get what I mean.
Yes, you're talking about that we are in this paradigm shift, and I guess one of the obstacles or challenges within that shift is that we don't really know what to shift to. We only know what we're shifting from, and what we're shifting from is an impossibility. You say something like we bypass nature to use this superpower that the oil and the fossil fuel is, which is like a premise for our daily life, but we haven't invented an alternative. We don't know what to go to. We know we need to leave the system, but we haven't invented the alternative yet.
Yes. So in my book, I'm trying to kind of you could say use this verfremdung effect that Brecht spoke about. So So we kind of take for granted what we have. So kind of pointing out the superpowers that we were given by oil. So basically, we're not 70% water, we're 95% oil. That is, most of us would not exist if we had not had this advantage of the superpowers that oil gave us. And just we don't see how easy our daily life is compared to 500 years ago when we can have this barrel of oil that can just beam us to the Canary Islands in 5 hours. So and then bring us all this food and all this warmth in the winters. And so we're in this impossible dilemma where we kind of bypass nature, and we have to, in the next 30 years, we have to find a substitute for this, because we can't really live without the superpowers. We can't go back to the life of my great-grandfather or grandmother, because it's just, it's not possible, actually. So that's why I'm using mythology also, because we're almost like in some kind of a Aesop fairy tale or something. We got some superpower, but that at some moment the payday comes, and we have to pay back for everything that we got in the last 100 years. So I'm trying to, like the idea. So like, for example, a climate conference. So that's why I refer to mythology, because a climate conference, we think that's a very boring thing. And it's like, we don't understand. It's like, hey kids, the leaders of the world are meeting to discuss the weather. That is not just the weather, but how they are creating or changing the weather. Napoleon did not think he could change the weather. Genghis Khan could not change the weather. Caesar could not change the weather. We're on this mythological era where the leaders of the world are some kind of thunder gods, tragic thunder gods, with the power of the future in their hands, and they're kind of failing it. This big moment that they have.
And that's a very smart way of describing it, and using like the mythical time to frame, also to find the new, or find the old language rather for what is going on, since many of the climate disasters are also linked. I mean, we can see the rain of grasshoppers, etc., invasion of grasshoppers, which is like super biblical image. You also talk about like how we're playing, like literally playing with fire, with the fossil fuels and.
Yes, that's also the thing, is that we have designed everything so well that now we see the forest fires that are going on, or we see disasters when an oil refinery blows up or something, but we don't, or when an oil tanker burns somewhere in the ocean, but we don't see that this oil was all supposed to burn anyway.
Yes, exactly.
That is, so we don't understand the daily disaster. So when. And then everything has been designed so well that we don't see the fire in traffic. We don't see fire every day, even though everything that we're doing is fueled by fire. So I tried to make this fire visible, because we had a volcanic eruption in Iceland in the year 2010.
Yes.
And so everybody saw that fire, and it closed down the airspace of Europe.
Yeah. And especially the aircraft had to land and stay on the ground, which was like also very symbolical.
Yeah, but that fire, that volcanic eruption, was still that was about 150,000 tons of CO2 per day that came from that volcano. Human emissions are about 100 million tons per day. So that means that the fire that, if we translate our emissions into volcanoes, it's the same as we had 666 of these volcanoes erupting every single day, every moment, all year, always. I'm sorry about the mythological number, it's just math. 100 million divided by 150,000 is 666.
Yeah.
Or I could say 667 if I don't want to be too mystical here. So never, if you talk to a geologist and you ask him, when was the last time 667 huge volcanoes were erupting simultaneously for 20, 30, 40 years? He will not be able to point at such an event in geological history. So I'm trying to bring these things like 35 gigatons. It doesn't have any meaning for us. But if I translate that into fire and volcanoes, then myself, I start to understand what it is, because before I did not understand it.
Exactly, it's super interesting to when you describe it as the Earth is moving from geological time, which is these eons of millions of years, to human time, which is such a short time frame. And once again, using your grandmother as the example, like the biggest changes regarding the Earth and the premise of living on Earth was in her last 10 or 20 years, in her long, almost 100 years of life.
Yes, so actually I'm using kind of the people that kind of molded me, my grandparents, and stories that they tell me, because they all kind of touch this Anthropocene. So my grandparents, they were glacial explorers at times when the glaciers seemed eternal. So in the 50s, the glaciers, they just thought they would be there for the next 5,000 years.
Yes.
But now we know that these glaciers are vanishing within the time of somebody born today again, becoming as old as my grandmother is now. So that's Earth leaving geological speed, starting to change in human speed. And that's a fundamental change of paradigm of how nature is interacting.
And also a big shift in what on Earth is water and what is not water.
Yes,
we have to finish now, but I can still, you are hopeful. Can you give us some thoughts of hope just for wrapping up this conversation? Like, what do you see in the future? How can we survive?
So basically, as soon as we understand this and we start moving things into the right direction, most of the technology already exists, it just has not been scaled up. And if we see what humans have done in 30 years, in the 20th century, from scaling up aviation or nuclear energy or whatever these inventions that we've seen that were amazingly scaled up in maybe 30 years, we have to live through a similar phase of scaling up. And the thing is that my children will feel that every single aspect of industry or jobs or whatever they choose, if they go into food, fashion, transportation, it doesn't matter what field they enter, they have to be radical innovators in every single field. And that does not have to be a very negative situation to feel you have a higher meaning in whatever field you enter. And so if we have 4 billion kids on the planet, I think there's 3 or 4 billion, and that whole generation wants to move things into the right direction, then the best scientists that I've spoken to, they say that it is possible to move it into the right direction. The technology is there. We just need the mind shift.
Yes. Well, thank you. Now our time has run out, unfortunately. I could keep on discussing this forever. I strongly recommend everyone to read the book. Den kommer att finnas på svenska som sagt i januari. Stort tack till Andri Snaer Magnason.
Tack så mycket.